I was hoping you could bring us
Right.
back to being the youngest Lobo you can remember being and walk us through a little bit what it sounded like to be you growing up before you had any control over
Right.
it.
Well, the earliest I could remember, like the oldest, not to say the oldest music, but Michael Jackson was a big part of it. I mean, as tacky and corny as it sounds, because it's like I guess for a lot of us from the 70s, 80s, when I heard that Off the Wall album, I was like, wow, who who's this? I mean, the beats, the rhythms, the voice, the choruses, the bridges, all that just blew me away. So I was like, I was sucked in at a young age with music, and my parents used to play records all the time
Mm.
of Michael Jackson. I mean, old school Spanish, romantic songs, all these classical dudes, Camilo Sesto, Puga, Julio Iglesias, all that. So that was always in my house. And plus, my sisters, who are like a lot older than I am,
Okay.
they were playing, like you said, Led Zeppelin, Jim Morris and all that. So it all came I noticed Michael Jackson, MJ, I noticed him. I took a took a big part of my musical, likings, but then with my sisters and everything, I started getting into a whole, a lot more, a big variety, if you want to call it that, a big variety of other musics and styles.
No,
Yeah.
and it's super
So that's the
interesting
earliest.
because everybody kind of answers that different. Although the Michael Jackson people, from what I've been told, you had to have been there, and unless you were there, you would not be saying things like Drake compares to Michael Jackson.
Yeah, man. Yo, bro, I had the gloves. I had the jackets with the zippers, like I went all out. Now, if the moves and all that, you know what? I I wasn't sort of attached to the movements and learn to dance. I was really into like listening to the music and like separating the sounds at an early age.
Okay.
I could separate sounds, which back in the days, as you know, LPs, which is like a great sounding way of listening to music, you could hear the sounds really well the way it was mastered to put on LPs. So I just remember that's what caught my attention. Yeah, the moves were amazing. He's an amazing dancer in the videos and all that. But, for a lot of us that came here from other countries, the TV wasn't the first thing we had, you know? It was
Okay.
the boom box, it was the music, it was the records, the
Actually, that's a
speakers. So it
really,
was
really interesting point that you just said that I've never thought about. Because, like you just said, you basically you immigrate here when you're really young, and your family doesn't have a
right.
TV. Whereas a lot of people who might have grown up here
Exactly.
would have just had that TV based off of
Yeah,
not having the costs that come with immigration.
exactly. Absolutely. That's exactly what it was. Now, don't get me wrong, like it didn't take that long for us to get a
Right, right,
TV,
right.
but that moment, that gap where I
No, it
was
was
introduced to all
noticeable.
these kinds of sounds and musics and being here, Montreal, which is super diverse and multicultural, I caught on right away to music, like just watching my sister play records and watch my mom on Sundays when it was cleaning time, play these slow tunes from South American Spanish tunes and, French tunes, Joe Dassin and all that. So it was a big variety. So I was already like separating and dissecting music at an early age, listening to the bass line and knowing that was the groove and the rhythm, that's what got you moving. And once again, like I said, I didn't jump into the aspect of the dancing in the videos because, like I said, there was a gap there. But as soon as the videos came and you could
Mm.
actually see the artists, still, I was trying to, like wonder how they do all that, how they make music. Because now you just see the guy dancing and you just see the guy singing, but there's nobody playing the music, for the music that had no bands, like Michael Jackson and
Right.
stuff like that. But
Yo,
for
and
everything
that's
else, yeah, of course, you
okay.
see
So
the
that's a
rock
super
bands and all that.
interesting point too. It might not be that like I've never thought about that before. Because since I'm like growing up, I'm born in '87. So for me, by the time I'm cognizant of
Right,
stuff, like it's kind of you get it, right? Everyone gets how it all
right,
works. But to go from the period of
right.
like everything's bands to all of a sudden you're seeing people without bands, that must have been like that's supposed to be crazy big for a kid to like
Yeah,
go through that
exactly.
process.
Yeah, because there was a lot coming in. I mean, the 80s, man. I mean, you got so many you got Prince, Michael Jackson, you got Queen, you got, you know, uh, I could name a million of them. Sade, which I'm a huge fan of Sade. As soon as I heard the first Sade records, I was like, oh my God, like, that's it, that's what music sounds to me. That's music to me. I wasn't really connected right away to the electronics. I like disco, but it was like from my sister's era, so I wanted my own thing.
Mm.
And then when I started figuring out,
And then
yeah,
because you had your older sisters and you said significantly older, they was the ones doing all the all the lifting, finding the music, and you just get to absorb
yeah,
that.
exactly.
And so,
Yeah, the crate dig. And I remember Sam's Music downtown.
mm, I,
I remember them taking me once there when I was a little kid, and just them going through digging in the crates, looking for stuff and bringing home back stuff and listening to it and being like in complete awe because I had no say, right?
right.
I'm a little, I'm a little wolf at that time. I'm a cub.
So that's cool though. That
Yeah,
like already though at a super young age, you're like in a sense breaking down stuff and getting into producer mode before, because most people don't go there right away. You're one of the
yeah,
first
I didn't
people I've
even know,
talked to
man.
that was like, yeah, that's what I thought
Yeah,
was super cool. And then the rest of it came okay, but there was the fucking
yeah,
sounds
it came
behind it.
much, much later because my thing was basketball. As soon as I was a teenager,
Mm,
my thing was like basketball. It was basketball here because I'm 6'5", right? So
right.
it was like it was like written for me, like, yeah, you got to play basketball. So I played basketball,
Which high school did you go to?
played basketball in the streets, yeah, and for the schools, for Ville Saint Laurent, and that was a dream. But then I broke my leg, and then I had a lot of time at home watching movies and listening to music. So that was another part of my life that things sort of started, taking place,
Right.
taking form.
So basically, you're into like music as like more, let's say, as like a fan of it all, right? And then you're consuming it.
Yeah,
You don't really
completely.
have any big aspirations. You're being a kid,
Not really, because
and
I don't idolize. I don't. That's my personal take. I don't idolize, like musicians, artists, or actors and people that are in the entertainment business as idols. Like, oh my God, that's my idol, or that's
mm,
what I idolize from making or loving music. I just see music as it's a form. It's unique because it's theirs. It was that person's moment of writing something, of producing something. And even before I ever started producing, like I told you, that gap of just listening and intaking everything, it was just listening, like liking, knowing what I like, there was a lot of melodies in those times too, which is what, the 90s, when the 90s hip hop and everything came in, not a lot of the tunes had melodies, it was most
facts.
samples and
A
it
lot
was,
of
it was
fucking long verses.
grimy. Yeah, exactly. 30, 32 bars, 48 bars,
9 guys on a
it was an
song.
endless. Yeah, exactly. But that's the other part that comes later on, when you start producing, then you start thinking, yeah, I need melody because I need a good chorus for this track. So
mm,
that's how I relate to music. I go back to those things, like I pinpoint times in my life where I was listening to songs when I make beats, and I tend to go in that mode and not to recreate whatever kind of melody, but I go back to moments. I believe that when I create music, I create a moment in time. I create a moment in the music because it's momentary, whether you like it or not.
right.
When I'm making music, I'm not trying to make something that's timeless or that it's periodic to a certain point, but I just make it. And then
Honestly,
comes
that's
out what
like
comes out.
that's one of the more artist ways to approach music, if you ask me, where
Yeah,
it's less
absolutely.
about the end goal and more about the expression. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
and I find that really
Because you
cool.
always start making music like, oh, I'm gonna make this today, and it never comes out like that. At least
Nah.
not for me.
Um,
That's what 90% of the time happens.
I have to like marinate on an idea for 6 months to be able to pull off. This
Yeah,
is what it's
exactly.
gonna be.
Yeah.
Spontaneously, nah. I'll be like starting a verse over here, and it's all the way over there by the end, and it just does not go.
Yeah.
And I think that's cool. Music is great like that.